Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to LB's IAS. In this video, we are going to see a new chapter, Fiscal Policy. Fiscal policy is by a government. So fiscal policy was prepared and implemented by the government. So first of all, we just need to know about what is the meaning of a fiscal policy and what is the meaning of a monetary policy. So both these policies was used to control the inflation and stabilize the economy. So monetary policy is related to the interest rate. Monetary policy is related to the interest rate of banks. So monetary policy was prepared and implemented by Reserve Bank of India. So it was related to the interest rate of a bank's adjustment in the interest rate, and it was done by a Reserve Bank of India. But fiscal policy is a different one, which is related to the taxes and expenditure. Taxes and expenditure. So fiscal policy was done by the prepared and implemented by the government of India. So these two was different. First, we just need to know the difference. Monetary policy is related to the interest rate of a banks. Fiscal policy is related to the taxes and the expenditure. That was fiscal policy was done by the government. So in this chapter, we are going to see about a fiscal policy only. Monetary policy, we will see it in another chapter. So fiscal policy is nothing related. It is related to fiscal policy is nothing but it is related to taxation. So taxation. The government is imposing taxes on various products and services, like any products that we buy in a shop, buy in a showroom, then the services that we are getting from schools, colleges, and then in a hospital. So everything was taxed except some items. So except some items, every goods and service that we are consuming was undergoes a tax imposing. So fiscal policy was related to the taxation. Then public spending. Public spending is nothing but a government is spending on various projects like construction of roads, welfare measures, and other projects. So fiscal policy was also related to the public spending. Then borrowing by the government. So government is also borrowing money from various sources. So fiscal policy was also related to the borrowing of money. Okay. So next, what we are going to see is how this fiscal policy was prepared and implemented. So it was carried out by the legislative and the executive organ. So it was carried out by both the legislative organ, which is nothing but a parliament. In a parliament, the taxes was imposed during a session, parliamentary session, especially budget session. So it was it can be a legislative method. Then executive method, it can also implemented by a executive methods also. Regarding if for example some spending was controlled by a district collector, some spending was done by a district collector who is comes under the executive. So for that rules and regulations was created at the executive level. Okay, ministers were do some spending regarding some projects without any legislative measures. It was a executive one. So the decision was taken at a executive level. Okay, so the fiscal policy can be carried out by both the legislative and the executive levels. So certain policies was related to the creation of a legislation for certain taxes. Some types of decision, public spending does not require any legislative decision, legislative law-making process. It was directly taken by the decision was directly taken by the executive itself, which is nothing but ministers and then executive works under the ministers, district collectors. So like that. So fiscal policy was carried out both by the legislative and the executive organs of a government. Instruments. So what are all the instruments of this fiscal policy is that first one is the taxes. So how much percentage of taxes was introduced? What are all the various types of taxes? So it was related to the taxes. Next one is the expenditure. What are all the expenditure that was involved? It may be expenditure on any projects or services. So fiscal policy has two instruments. One is the taxes, and another one is the expenditure. Then functions of a government. So before knowing about the fiscal policy, we just need to know about the functions of a government. So governments has a three main function. Governments has a three main function. First one is the allocation of a public goods. Allocation. So take for example, goods can be divided into two types. One is a private goods, and second one is a public goods. Private goods means it was manufactured and it can be provided by the private sector. Take for example, bikes. Bikes can be produced in a private sector. Then cars. Then cloths. Then biscuits. Then any other items which can be produced by the private sector is a private goods. Public goods is nothing but a goods and public goods and services is nothing but a goods and services that was provided by the public. That is what is known as a public goods or public services. Take for example, police. In our country, police service was provided by the government, military, army service. Then roads. Although today privatization was used for construction purposes, the roads was essentially the projects was carried out based on the government policies and rules and regulations. So construction of a roads, in the majority of the places, government's involvement is there in a road construction. So we can consider it as a road as a public good. Then some other goods which are provided by the government only. The private sector cannot be able to provide such a service. So that is what is known as a public goods. So government must need to provide these public goods and services which cannot be provided by the private sector. Only government can able to provide such a thing. That is known as a public goods, and its allocation is a important function of a government. Next one is a distribution. Distribution is nothing but a distribution of a wealth. Distribution of a wealth. So for the purpose of distribution of a wealth, the most important one that was used is a taxes, imposing of a taxes. Consider if there is a no tax, means that big companies, the big corporates cannot need not required to pay taxes to the government. If they don't pay any taxes, then rich will become rich. Rich will become rich. Big corporates only grows because they are not, because if there is no taxes, they don't need to pay the taxes from their earnings. So they will become a rich. But the poor, what happens to the poor is that he may stay at a level or he may even go under a poor condition. So if there is a no tax, a rich does not pay a tax and keep saving their money or keep investing their money in some other projects or some other thing. By this way, he becomes a rich. But a poor always be a poor or even go under a worst condition. So government collects taxes from a rich people or who earns a lot, and provide it to the poor as a welfare policies or welfare projects. Welfare projects like public distribution system, government hospitals, like this through these welfare policies, government is distributing the wealth of a country to the all peoples. Not only the poor, even middle class, even the rich are also getting a benefits of a welfare programs that was provided by the government. So this is the most important function of a government, which is nothing but a distribution of a wealth of a country. Next one is a stabilization. What is the meaning of a stabilization? Is that the economy goes under a ups and down situation due to the various factors, due to the war, due to the failure of the economy, due to the import of a large products, then due to inflation, due to corruption. So there are various reasons the economy goes under a ups and downs situation. So a stabilized economy, to stabilize the economy was the important function of a government. The government must need to stabilize the economy. If it goes too much high or too much low, it will be a bad for a economy. So the important function of a government is a stabilization. So these three functions are the important functions of the government. For these important functions take place, fiscal policy was very much required. So for the carry out of important functions of a government, a fiscal policy is a very important one. Thank you.